The great thing about local newspapers and local politics is that everything takes the contour of the community that it's in, right? They're the only people giving you that. Everybody's giving you national politics, but you can only get that stuff from the newspaper in your town.
One of your main focuses of your study is sort of the effects of local opinion sections versus national opinion sections. Interestingly enough, this month, Gannett, which owns 250 newspapers, said that it's scaling back its opinion section for its local news, and that the use of local news sites giving you opinion on national news is not needed because you get all of that from the internet. So it seems like they're also, though, at the same time doubling down on local opinions, what they're saying that highlighting expert local voices that are not the same old talking heads and political hacks is a good thing. What do you think about that? And do you think, is that the right direction? Is local news opinion sections more better than national news?
I would say yes. I think local opinion sections work better, both for the newspaper and for the public, when they're not filled with national news. I think back in the day when it was your only source, there was value in getting both national and local opinions in there, because you couldn't go to the internet and get literally any national politics opinion you want for free at any time, right? The marketplace for national political opinions, I don't think is going to run dry anytime soon. But if you're devoting valuable space to syndicated content that you're paying for, talking about national politics that they get anywhere, people are going to start to wonder, why am I doing this? Why am I reading this in a local paper? And they're going to start thinking like partisans. And that's what we found in our study, where we partnered with the local newspaper that decided to just get rid of that national stuff on their opinion page.
Which newspaper?
This was the Desert Sun in Palm Springs, California, back in July 2019. They said, we're just not going to publish anything about national politics. So it was the middle of the Democratic primaries, nothing about that, nothing about President Trump, nothing about Congress, entirely about Palm Springs and California state politics for a month. And so in the book Homestyle Opinion that you introduced me with, we studied how that affected the content of the opinion page and used pre-post surveys of the area to see whether it affected people's political opinions and political distance from one another.
Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense, because the internet basically brings you the national news.
Almost exclusively.
And opinions about national news are everywhere. And so, but it seems a little bit like people listening might be like, who still reads a newspaper? So it's a little bit like, do you think those are like syndicated columnists? It seems like is that really still a big thing?
Yes, it is. Although, when Gannett makes a move like that, it makes it maybe less of a big thing. Gannett striking out against national opinion columnists is probably a blow to that syndicated industry, because they own a large percentage of U.S. daily newspapers now. The whole, the point of making the opinion page local, however, is that it gives a voice to community members and to state legislators and to local groups, interest groups that might be able to reach a broader public than they otherwise would have, with the credibility of the newspaper behind it. And that is valuable. And, we found the strongest effects of lessening polarization, which is what we found. There was a slowdown in political polarization in this area. People weren't as much disliking each other, the other side politically. They weren't feeling as socially distanced from those people. Before the pandemic, we were talking about social distance. They didn't feel as socially disconnected from each other. And that's because they weren't reading about partisan conflict in faraway Washington, D.C. from Palm Springs, California. And before this experiment, fully half of their opinion page was about national politics. And that might not seem weird if you look at local opinion pages and you're used to seeing opinion columnists. But when you step back, that's a lot. That's a lot of what a local newspaper could be giving you. It's instead just giving you this kind of pale reflection of what you might be able to get on the internet from any number of top opinion sources. the great thing about local newspapers and local politics is that everything takes the contour of the community that it's in, right? So in Palm Springs, they talked more about architectural preservation because they have all this mid-century modern architecture there that is, very famous. They talked about development downtown because they're building a minor league ice hockey arena for the new Seattle Kraken AHL team, and they're worried about traffic, and they tried to build it on a Native American casino, and then that ended up getting rebutted, and the land that was tied up with some of this stuff was involved in a mayoral corruption scandal. I mean, it was just the most local politics stuff you can get, and that's just their marketplace advantage, right? They're the only people giving you that. Everybody's giving you national politics, but you can only get that stuff from the newspaper in your town.
Yeah, and it costs money, right? It was easy to just flip a national columnist who is syndicating their stuff, and you didn't have to fact check or didn't have to invest. With actually building out an opinion section of a local news, you'd have to seek out the experts, you have to seek out the opinion makers, and then you have to edit them and fact check them. You have to do actual work.
It takes an editor, right? Opinion editors are a diminishing position. Certainly this Gannett move is a part of that, but it's reflecting a broader trend. If you're going to get people from the community who've never written an op-ed before to write, that's going to take some editing. You've got to get your succinct argument down to like 600 words. It's not something people are used to doing. But then you get their perspective in the local newspaper, and people hear about what matters to them. Maybe it's, whether it's bighorn sheep in the desert or whether there's a bike path that connects the cities. I coded 3 months of the opinion page for this paper. So I've never actually been there, but I feel like I have because I read so much of it. You really get a sense of the community based on what the people in the community are saying. But you can't have that in the rigorous, prominent way that you need if you don't have an opinion editor, and the Palm Springs Desert Sun did at the time, and he had to work harder in July than maybe in some other months, but ultimately he and the executive editor agreed it was worth it.
And did you see any effects from that change? How did it affect the community?
Yeah, so our findings were that polarization slowed down and that these local issues came to the fore. They found as a paper that they almost doubled their clicks on opinion content in July relative to June. They got way more readership online from the local stuff they were publishing. And it made the community value the opinion page in a real way that mattered later, about a year later when Gannett actually, which owns the paper, I should say.
Oh, they owned it. Okay, so that was almost a study based on. So Gannett may have made that change based on some of the studies that you were working on?
Nobody at Gannett has been in contact with me. I hope that the effect of the book wasn't to, cut opinion page coverage. A lot of them have cut down to 2 days a week, but they have been made more local. So I think that's valuable. But at least in the Desert Sun, they offered buyouts and the opinion editor took it. In September 2020, he was getting close to retirement. And usually when there's a buyout, you don't get that position back. But the executive editor, Julie Makinen, sort of using our experiment and some other arguments about the value of the opinion page, fundraised from the community to raise enough money for a salary to hire a new opinion editor. And so, the day after this Gannett decision came down, I got an email from Julie saying, we're still doing this. We're still doing an opinion page. And it's largely because they were able to fundraise from the community, and it's something that community values. And I think this experiment really brought that value home.